Hello and welcome to today's webinar. This is the last session of our Risk and Regulation series of online events that's been taking place over the last 2 days. I'm Chloe McCulloch. I'm the Editorial Director at Assemble Media Group, and this webinar is titled Embedding the Golden Thread into Construction Processes. So to talk about all of that, I'm joined by a brilliant panel who you can see up on your screens now. We've got Philip Pamment, a director at of residential at CPC Project Services. We've got Andrew Barraclough, Group Design Director at Waits. And we've got May Winfield, Global Director of Commercial, Legal and Digital Risks at Bure Happold. So welcome to the panel, everybody. I'm not going to say too much about this topic ahead of our expert speakers, as they have got a lot to cover in their presentations, but I will just say today's discussion obviously is taking place in the context of the Building Safety Act becoming law very recently. And there is now an obligation to create and maintain a golden thread of information to ensure buildings are safe. So that's the overview. No detail there because I'm going to hand over to the panel for all of that. But I do just want to go over a little bit of a housekeeping for you. Just a reminder that you can post questions throughout the presentations, and your questions will be saved, and then we will save those for the end of the session when we have a Q&A part to the webinar. So as questions occur to you, please do post them, and we will try our very best to get to as many of them as we can. Also, it would be great if the audience wants to participate via social media. So if you do want to post about this session, or indeed any of the other sessions that you've heard over the last couple of days, just use the hashtag risk and reg 2022. So that's risk and reg 2022, and obviously we'll be able to repost anything that you post through our accounts. Also, at the end of this session, on your screens you may get or you should get a feedback survey pop-up window come up. It only takes about 60 seconds to complete, and it's really useful feedback for us to try and make sessions as useful as possible for you in future. So finally, I do just want to say, because I know it's a really frequent question, this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available on demand about 60 minutes after the session ends, and all of our webinars that have been part of this series will be are already available on demand, so just go to the website and you'll find them there. Right, that's quite enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Philip first, and the rest of us are going to turn our mics off and our webcams off just so that you can focus on Philip and his presentation. So over to you, Philip.
Thank you very much, Chloe. Welcome everybody. So I've got the unenviable task of starting off this session. My slides have far fewer graphics than everybody else's, so you can be dazzled by the clever graphics and the interesting pictures from May and Andrew later. But so without further ado, let me talk about a little bit about myself and go through the points I want to make. I'm a director at CPC Project Services, which is a national project management consultancy providing project management services across a wide range of sectors. My experience is purely in the residential sector. And I want to talk about my experience as coming from an employer's agent, principally for housing associations and local authorities, although I've done a little bit of working with private clients. The other aspect to note is that my role and my experience comes through using D&B procurement routes as well as development agreements. So I appreciate there's a variety of other routes that deliver high-rise residential, but this is where I'm speaking from. And so really I'm kind of bringing a client perspective. The clients that I deal with are long-term, highly experienced landlords. They have extensive development experience and extensive development procedures in place. The issue with that is that a lot of people are going to engage with the Building Safety Act who have significantly less experience. But even with experienced clients, I think there are some challenging issues that they have to address, and hopefully I can start to go through some of those. One of the points I wanted to make so far, and I know that Dame Judith has been in the press chastising everybody for the slow pace of change, which I responded to. But I think it's important to understand, although it's been a 5-year journey, the scope of change that's being anticipated or being requested and demanded of the sector is unprecedented. I've listed on the screen, apart from the fire safety changes in Part B, an extremely wide range of quite significant structural changes that are being pushed through in other areas. All of this is being done under the shadow of a major inquiry with significant legal and criminal implications. It's been done at a time when there is significant regulatory change in other areas. Part L, F, O, S, and Z. I can't think of a time when as many parts of the building regs and approved documents have been either up for change, in change, or change has been put through. And these are quite significant changes.
Philip, can I just interrupt for 1 second? It looks like your slide is slightly cutting off on the left-hand side. I just wonder if you could resize it just so that we can see all of the copy. Possibly you can minimize it. Sorry for this. I just don't want people to miss your slide.
So let me. Is that showing correctly?
No, it's just showing a section of it.
Okay, let me try.
Wasn't doing that before, was it, when we practiced?
Yeah.
We can see it like that. That's fine if you didn't want to put it into full display, and then
Okay.
That's better than it was.
Let me. Is that okay? Can that work for everybody?
I think we can see it now. We see the whole sort of navigation bar, but I think that's better than it was before. So let's stick with that. At least we can all see it's visible. Ah, perfect. That's good. Very good.
Okay. All right then. Apologies, everybody. Just to finish off this slide, the whole of this context of significant change is now occurring in the context of significant social headwinds, as I've described it. First, we had Brexit and the concerns that would deliver for the supply chain. Then we had the COVID interruption, and now we've got the inflation effects of the war in the Ukraine. And all of these are really quite significant and having significant impacts on both the ability of the supply chain to engage with change, but also just even trying to stay, solvent and afloat. The Building Safety Act is a very significant piece of legislation. It's a complex piece of legislation, but it's supported by a significant number of detailed supplementary regulations that have still yet to be enacted. They've been issued in draft, and there's 8 of them at the moment. So the fact that we're trying to adopt and engage and understand and implement these changes, whilst we still don't have all of the details agreed, and in the case of Golden Thread, that affects a number of aspects. Right, so some points to note about the Golden Thread. The Golden Thread, although there's been working groups to look at it and try and work it out, Dame Judith has spoken about what she thinks it is. Legally, it's going to be defined in one of the supplementary regulations that hasn't been enacted, with the snappy title there of the Building High Risk Buildings England's regulations. And broadly, it's going to cover the fire statement from Gateway 1, the building control approval documents from Gateway 2, the audit records produced during construction, as well as the change control documents and mandatory reporting documentation during construction. I know that Andrew and May are going to speak a little bit more about exactly what is the golden thread, but it's interesting that compared to some other aspects, such as key building information, the golden thread isn't as prescriptively defined as other areas, and that's one of the challenges that I think we face as a sector. It also talks about the fact that the golden thread must be stored electronically, but doesn't prescribe that it be BIM or as part of a BIM model or a 3D electronic model. Although I do think larger clients and some of the clients that I'm working with are looking to integrate it with their BIM protocols and have updated their BIM protocols specifically in light of the golden thread obligations and their requirement as principal accountable people to hold information for future safety case reviews. But as Andrew pointed out when we were having a conversation before this presentation, Dame Judith was very keen for it to be BIM and for it to be 3D models, but that hasn't made it into the regulations, and I have to say I think that's a positive thing. I think that would be a step too far. One of the aspects about the golden thread is that it has to be stored in, as I said, electronic format, but it's the client's responsibility to set up that facility. But there are no definitions yet about the format of that facility, but it is likely, I think, to be some form of project extranet. And one of the issues that I'll speak more on in a second is the legal reliance on different parties of the progressive photographic construction audit records will be a key issue. As part of the Building Safety Act, various duty holders have to issue declarations of compliance or compliance statements, and the basis on which they make those statements and the information they rely on and who holds that information and how do they have reliance on that information, I think is an interesting question that we need to unpack as part of understanding and implementing golden thread effectively. Some of the issues in terms of during construction, the electronic facility, and this is where I think it lends itself to a project extranet of some format. We're going to need to make sure that it can't be inadvertently deleted. We're going to need to have some sort of facility that provides an audit trail of changes. There is discussion and some of the criteria for what the golden thread should look like. Is a single source of truth and transparency. We need to make sure that we have permission levels to control it. But some of the difficulties, I think, are the fact that typically the contractors have produced these project extranets, and if more than one party, if the client, for example, is another significant duty holder, is going to rely on it, how do you have legal reliance on the data? The threat of disconnection during a dispute, the risk of insolvency, and the whole issue of IP and ownership of the extranet to control access to commercially sensitive information. These are all significant issues. Some of the other aspects are the fact that how you structure the golden thread information, the more organised my clients are very much thinking about the format that they want the golden thread information presented to them so that they can migrate the data efficiently into their asset management databases. And I think that, typically that might be a COBie type spreadsheet, but I think that's an important part that the sector's got to get their head around so that they define it at the start in order to facilitate the collection of it during construction. The whole issue, if the client wants to delegate the responsibility to the contractor to set up the electronic facility, you pick up the whole issues about if the contractor owns the project extranet, and some of the aspects there are discussed in terms of what the implications of that are. The golden thread at handover is much more extensive than the O&M manual and health and safety files we've been used to, which is going to take longer to check prior to issue, not least because the client needs to issue a compliance statement as part of Gateway 3. But another significant risk about the golden thread is that the building safety regulator has 12 weeks in which to assess the information as part of their Gateway 3. Now, my understanding is that currently the building safety regulator will not consider overlapping the submission of Gateway 3 information with testing and commissioning to reduce that delay. So the implication is that buildings are going to largely stand idle for up to 12 weeks or longer, with all sorts of insurance, security and maintenance issues that flow from that. And a part that I imagine is deeply unpalatable to contractors is that, as far as I can see, the consequences and the cost and the impact of that delay will be a contractor delay rather than the client delay, because I would argue that the completion certificate from the building safety regulator now by default becomes a condition precedent for practical completion. The golden thread obviously needs to be set up in a way that the principal accountable person can look after it and use it and do it properly. But clients are going to have to get their head around about what that means in terms of change management, and therefore the format that they take it on and have it so they understand how they're going to implement changes and record properly the impact of cyclical maintenance programs and any fire risk assessment findings and reactive maintenance that they carry out. Last slide, just some headlines just to summarise what I've been going through. I think the management of the golden thread information during construction needs robust employers' requirements to clarify the obligations on the contractor for change control and mandatory reporting. I think there is a legal reliance by clients on the contractor's progressive photographic audit records to support their the client's compliance statement at Gateway 3 is problematic and needs to be carefully thought through and understood. I think there are complex issues about data ownership and intellectual property rights for golden thread information stored in the electronic facility. And I think the importance of prescriptively specifying the format of the golden thread information very early on is critical to ensure smooth migration of the information to the client's asset management database. And the last point that I've made earlier is that it's electronic but not BIM. So those are the points that I wanted to go through. Back over to you, Chloe.
Thank you so much, Philip. That was really, really interesting, and there's so much there, and I'm sure the other speakers are going to kind of delve into some of that as well. But just before you switch off your webcam and let them do their presentations, just that point around delay at sort of final sign-off, where the safety regulator has to sign off and there being a potential 12-week delay. I mean, that seems like a very big issue.
It is a big issue. I know that this has been raised extensively all the way through, even in the early stages of the drafting of the Building Safety Bill, as it was then, now the Building Safety Act. I can't comment on more recent discussions. I'm not party to them, but I've spoken to various people who have much more first-hand information, and I understand this whole issue has been raised at the most senior levels. I'm presuming there's this concern that they don't want to have to assess a complex body of information on a drip feed basis. But yeah, no, I see this as an enormous problem. At the very least, you could argue it's going to add 12 weeks to everybody's construction program. But the whole issue of having a essentially finished building sitting idle for 12 weeks, apart from being slightly morally questionable, has significant security and maintenance issues.
Okay, well, look, it might be something that listeners want to ask more questions about, and other panel members might want to comment on at the end. But I think, well, you've raised a whole load of interesting points there. So thank you for kicking off the subject. I think we're going to now go to Andrew. So Andrew, if you could turn your webcam on, and Philip, if you could turn your mic off and your webcam off, and hopefully Andrew will pop up. There you are, Andrew. Right, I'm going to hand over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Chloe. Hopefully you can all hear me. I'm going to keep my presentation really short, but just in the way of introduction, I'm the Group Design Director here at Waits, and I've got responsibility for design across everything that we do, even though we rely heavily on designers up and down the country to author designs for us. Ultimately, in most of our work, which is design and build, Waits take design responsibility. And that work is extraordinarily diverse in its building typology. And we do quite a lot of mid to high rise residential, both for private sector clients, developers, and also for registered social landlords. So that's a little bit of context. Let me move on to my next slide. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what Waits has been doing in this space, because we have been quite heavily involved. And the first thing to say is that we are early adopters as part of DLUHC and have been so since 2018. So we were one of the 12 charter founders for the Building Safety Charter. And we have been meeting with government and a variety of stakeholders consistently and regularly over the last 4 years, talking about a very, very wide range of topics. And those stakeholders have included, obviously, government, the HSC, city and local authorities, registered social landlords, private developers, some peers, other contractors, and trade bodies. And we have literally discussed and debated all of the documentation that government have published, from Building a Safer Future through to the update in building regulations, setting the bar, and eventually the Building Safety Bill. And it's been a fascinating process to be a part of. I think one of the things that's come across very loud and clear, and this indeed was referenced in the document titled Building a Safer Future, is that government are very much looking to industries to step forward. I'm absolutely confident that whilst we will have a whole series of guidance and statute that we have to follow, I wouldn't be under any illusion at all that we are not going to be told what to do. Government are very clear, in my opinion, in that they're looking for us to step up, take leadership responsibility, and figure some of these things out ourselves. And I think that creates a great opportunity for us. But it also means that even though there will be some secondary legislation and some further guidance, it's likely that we will not be given absolutely specific guidance that we have to follow when it comes to the Golden Thread. We've also been involved in some pilot projects, one of which is for British Land at Canada Water. We're currently in the ground working with this client on Plot A1, which is a 33-story tower, mixed-use development, large proportion of which is residential. So it falls absolutely squarely under the remit of the Building Safety Bill. And we're looking to share what we're doing, not just with British Land, but with other stakeholders, and certainly with the early adopter program. So that's in progress. There are other schemes of a similar nature that we're also working on. So we are starting to put some of the things that we've been talking about internally into practice. We also have a very comprehensive and multidisciplinary series of internal working groups that are covering all of the things that we need to address as part of the statute and the Building Safety Bill going forward. And not surprisingly, one of those things is the Golden Thread. Not that we've necessarily got this all figured out, that's not the case, but I'm very keen that we collaborate with others and that industry does come forward with something that looks like standard practice when it comes to how we address the Golden Thread. And then finally, somewhat tangentially, we have also been the leader on a joint competence initiative looking at building envelopes. So this is where we come together with trade bodies, other interested parties and tier 1 contractors and subcontractors, and looked at what we think we need to put in place to demonstrate competency, particularly around building envelopes and facades. So there's a white paper which is currently in draft that's been circulated. If anyone on this call would be interested in taking a look at that, then please do contact me. Happy to share that and get guidance and input from as many people as we possibly can before that is finalized. So what are the topics for debate? I've just referenced a few things which I think are the topics for quite a lot of confusion. The first is around scope. So I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking that the Building Safety Bill is all around fire-related issues. But just to remind everyone, actually, the thread in the Building Safety Bill relates to all aspects of the building regulations. For sure, there's a real focus on safety. There's no question of that at all. But we mustn't forget the fact that it is actually all encompassing. It doesn't just relate to those issues of fire safety. The next issue, which I think is also the subject of quite a lot of debate, is the issue of competence and what might we need to demonstrate from a competence point of view when it comes to the golden thread. Now, we know that there's corporate competence and there is individual competence. And right now, it's still not entirely clear how deep we need to go into that. So, for example, I've had debates with people who have said that if we employ a designer, it's not just the corporate competence of that designer that we need to assess and record, but potentially every single member of that team. Now, personally, I think that's going too far. For sure, you would want to know that the lead individuals in that organization have got the appropriate levels of competence. But I think this is a topic that's likely to continue for some time until we've got some combined and shared views as to what's appropriate in this space of competence. Of course, gateway approvals are here to stay. They are a key part of the bill, and we're pretty clear that those approvals will need to form part of the golden thread. I think the question is just how much detail needs to be included as part of the golden thread, and indeed, do we need all of the gateway approvals? So every single document that supports that approval, or is it a summary version of an approval in some kind of abridged or executive summary? So once again, I think more debate required before we'll get to an aligned position on that. Philip has mentioned BIM. We have accreditation to BS 19650 and heading next year towards kite mark status. But I know that with our supply chain, not everyone has got the capability to deliver everything in BIM. That's still a journey that people are on. As Philip has said, it doesn't say anything in the bill about the use of BIM. It talks about the need for digital or electronic records. I think personally it would be a great shame if we don't use the tools at our disposal, and increasingly I think the industry is moving into that digital space. But what happens next? Well, logically, you'll be thinking about digital twins. Now, there's a lot of debate in the industry about this at the moment. I think it is something that we will migrate to. It will require considerable effort over and above that many of our supply chain currently do to get to that place. And of course, there are differing levels of maturity when it comes to digital twins. So are we looking to simply mirror what's there? Are we trying to monitor the asset? Or do we want to get to that great place where eventually we'll be able to autonomously control buildings from a virtual facsimile of the built asset? But logically, I think you would say that a digital twin is absolutely perfect as a vehicle for carrying the golden thread. Maybe the gold level standard, but nevertheless, it would, I think, do all that we need it to do when it comes to the requirements as set out in the bill. One of the other issues I think has caused lots of debate is whether or not we are required to tell the entire life story of the development of the project from cradle to grave, or even from Gateway 2 to Gateway 3. Now, of course, we know that there is provision for minor and major changes as part of the bill. I personally don't see the benefit of trying to track every single decision or piece of development that has occurred or will occur through the life of a project from Gateway 2 to 3. Fundamentally, it seems to me that what the tenants and the users are interested in after Gateway 3 is the steady state final solution that has been delivered to them as part of the completed project. But once again, I think more debate required to support that. And then finally, design stage reports. Well, I think that it's inevitable that a good deal of that information will be the information that forms part of the submissions under the gateway approvals. But I can say from my own experience, and we're actively involved in anything between 60 and 80 projects at any point in time, the days when design teams and customers and contractors required that a comprehensive set of documentation was put together that represented the end of each RIBA design stage typically have gone. We see it occasionally, we like it, we think it's a good thing, we think that creates great discipline. Personally, I would love it if we got to a place where the gateway approvals put more emphasis on having properly considered, completely coordinated with all the strategies that support those design stage end reports in place. That to me would be a really good place to get to. So from a practical point of view, what might a golden thread look like? And this is our interpretation of what we think we are heading towards with our projects. And at the top there, you see in hierarchical form what we have called the core principles. There are a whole bunch of things that we will just have to do. Some are new, some are old, but fundamentally every single project will require some basic core documentation that is available to demonstrate to the ongoing users and occupants of that building. And they include things like the competency checks, the design stage reports. More importantly, perhaps, when we get into the areas of fire risk, the building safety case, the fire and emergency file, and of course the preoccupation fire risk assessment, all super important. And then hierarchically, as we drill into projects in more detail, we see a case for an estate-wide proposition, a whole building proposition, and then from a residential point of view, getting into the detail of individual apartment typologies. And for each of those, there will be a requirement for as-built information, something that we have typically always done, so that's not particularly new. Systems descriptions, the whole functionality around asset information, so that people can operate and maintain those systems. So we're talking specifically here about active systems, but of course we need to capture all the other elements and components in the building that make up that building. And then, interestingly, the whole issue of installation evidence. So I know, and I guess many people on this call know, that as we go through the process of constructing things, mistakes are made, we get non-compliances are raised. We, like many of our competitors, have a mechanism for tracking all of that, along with photographic records. But typically when we get a non-compliance, it's raised, the owner of that issue is asked to address it, it's fixed, and it's closed out. We at the moment don't see a need to capture all of those non-compliances as part of the golden thread. But once again, it could be read that you do need to do that. So what is the live story as far as those non-compliances are concerned across the entire evolution of the project? Rather, we think this should be about capturing the final installation so that we can quite simply demonstrate that the item concerned has been installed appropriately and correctly from both a specification, detailing and workmanship point of view. And then finally, we know that we have to capture the minor and major changes that occur through Gateway 2 through to 3. And holistically, we think this will form the basis for us, at least, of how we will look to capture the golden thread on our projects. So that's all I wanted to say. I'm going to hand you back to Chloe, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks so much, Andrew. I'm going to skip straight to May now because I want to give her enough time and then try and squeeze some questions in. So May, over to you. Andrew and I will switch off our mics. Oh, May, sorry, I think your mic might be off still. We should be able to hear you now. 1 second. I'm just checking. I can't hear you there, but your mic does appear to be on. So we might just have a quick issue there. Let's just test it. Let's try again. I'm not sure what's going on there. Hold on a second. I'm just coming back on screen. We're having a slight problem with May's mic. What I might do, May, if you want to switch off your webcam and have a quick chat with Celine in the background, what I might do is just take this opportunity to bring back Andrew and Philip, just because we've got some questions coming through. And when May has got that issue sorted, we will go back to her. So I might just invite Andrew and Philip back quickly if you're able to join us. Hello. Right, I've got Andrew back, I've got Philip back. Hopefully we'll be able to sort this soon. We've got some questions coming through. So let me just read out one just while we try and sort out the mic. There was one down here around, let me just see. So we've got so many. I know there were people saying that they would very much like to take part in or read the white paper, Andrew. So that's great. And then would the life story not help explain why certain design decisions have been made, which might be important for informing decisions during maintenance or refurbishment? I think, Andrew, you were talking on that point. You might just need to unmute.
Hi, Chloe, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Right, we've come back to May. Right.
Sorry, just carry on. I'm just checking that you can hear me. Carry on.
Okay, I might just let Andrew just answer that point around the life story. Could it actually be useful, or do you think it's just very onerous? Oh, sorry, the mic's gone again. What's going on with our mics today? Hold on a second. You were there. Try that again. Try that again, Andrew. It's looking like it's...
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. I think the life story could be useful, but I think we need to be careful about what we wish for, because if you go to every single issue and you get into lots of granular detail, this could become an absolute administrative nightmare. So I think big decisions, by all means, let's capture the life story, because those are the things that people will be interested in.
Okay. All right. Well, look, now we've got May back. I'm going to hand back over to her presentation. So we'll all disappear. Over to you, May.
Thank you. Hopefully you can.
I can see your presentation. It might not be in presentation mode, though. You might want to flip.
Is the screen still sharing?
Yeah, the screen is still showing.
Does that work?
That's perfect. All right.
Amazing. Thank you. Give me a shout if something goes wrong again. Hi everyone. I'm going to talk to you about some of the barriers to implement the Golden Thread. So I'm May Winfield. I'm a senior construction lawyer and a specialist in construction technology. I've been involved in various areas of BIM, digital twin, and so on. In terms of Borough Happold, we have been heavily involved in the Golden Thread. We do provide Golden Thread services already and find that clients are increasingly requesting it. However, that comes with its challenges, which I'll go through. So you've heard about the Golden Thread. The government issued some guidance this year to try and explain what it means. And as you'll see on the screen, they said it means the information about the building to allow someone to understand it, but also the information management to ensure the information is accurate. Now that's quite a long paragraph. I've seen this definition as well, which I like, and because I think it summarizes it very well. It says it's an accurate, up-to-date digital record, effectively to enable parties to maintain and operate a built asset. And that really goes to the heart of the intentions of the Golden Thread. Now, fundamentally for a client to get the Golden Thread, they have to explain what they want. And that comes with certain challenges, which I would like to highlight. One of them being sometimes the client will just say, I want you to use that sort of software or that system, thinking that that will then provide them a complete set of data or complete Golden Thread. But specifying a system in itself won't do that. Equally, sometimes the client may say, I want the following types of data. I want certain 3D models. I want a digital twin. Again, data and models in themselves aren't the Golden Thread. It's how they all interconnect together, how they're updated, how you use them. And sometimes I have seen and heard of many examples of a client simply saying, I want a Golden Thread. And they've similarly to experience in BIM, a client may have read about it, realize it's a really good idea, but not really understand what it is and how to ask for it. And when you say, well, what do you actually want? And they say, well, I want everything. I want the whole world. And if the client doesn't specify it, what you will find is you get halfway down the project or possibly to final deliverables, and you have quite a disappointed client because what's in their mind of what you were delivering and what was in yours might be very, very different. So how do you comply with requirements or ensure they are there's the ability to comply with them? When you are looking at requirements from a client, there's a couple of things that are important to bear in mind. One thing is, what are the binding requirements? Now, you'll probably find that there are a lot of technical specifications. There's a lot of documents around the data that's required. Not all of those will be contractual. And it's important to bear in mind which are actually the ones that are contractually binding that you have to comply with, and the ones which are more for knowledge base, more for knowledge and discussion. Equally, what systems and tools is the client going to use a certain system for maintenance? Is the format and the content of the data you're providing, is it going to fit into that system? I've heard so many examples from maintenance contractors where they say the information they get isn't actually very useful. There's too much of it, there's the wrong sort of data, and that's where the Golden Thread breaks. Equally, you heard earlier about copyright. There's loads and loads of data within a Golden Thread. For the aspect of the design or the contractor, are you happy for your data to be used for the lifetime of the asset? Does that need to be built into your costs? Are there some limitations that you want to put in terms of what the data can be used for? Who's responsible for checking the accuracy, the validity, the completeness? If you're handing over data, Do you have to update it over time? Do you have to check it's still valid and still accurate? And all this leads back to keeping records. If you agree something, say you agree you're handing over the data to enable someone else to carry on with the golden thread, write that down, talk about it, because the person you're talking to now is probably not going to be the same person you talk to later on. Equally, standardization is very important. There's so many different types of software and hardware and ways of naming files, ways of naming bits of models. If you all do something differently, it's not going to help the golden thread. It's just going to be this massive pile of data and information. And all that goes back to having a continuity on handover from all the different phases. Because you can't think, just because we have something in a digital format, that it's going to solve all your problems. Because having it, everything you can think of in a digital format, it's not so different from this. It's going to be a big mess. You have to have things in a very structured way. And so if you imagine a thread in one very neat line. So what, very quickly, a couple of ways of mitigating risks. One thing is to avoid the jargon, avoid acronyms. If you're using terminology like the golden thread, like digital twins, explain what you mean so everyone around the table has the same intentions, has the same understanding. Otherwise, it's going to be clear as mud if you say, I want the golden thread and I want you to provide it in BIM and with some digital twins. And all that's going to happen is you're going to end up in a very expensive, long-running dispute, and no one wants that. Equally, think about your documents, what's binding, making sure everything makes sense and there's no inconsistencies. The trouble at the moment with things like the golden thread, there's a mismatch between the lawyers and the people writing and the technical people. And so you go back to having clear requirements. The client has to be clear, what do you actually want? So you avoid the different interpretations. You get what you want, you make sure it's correctly programmed, the budget's accurate, you're not having that argument later on. And as I said, making sure you check things. Who's responsible for checking the data? Are there issues with regulations, the laws changing all the time? There's things like GDPR and personal data that need to be checked. So you don't have accidental problems for data you're going to use for a significantly long period of time. And use available guidance and templates. One thing to bear in mind is ISO 19650 is all about data management and information management. There's a lot of templates on the UK BIM framework that are useful, and there's a lot of guidance on the website as well. Ultimately, my last point would be something to bear in mind when you look at your requirements and documentation for the golden thread and also complying with them is, can you answer this question? Is it clear who does what, when and how? Or are there any gaps? Are there any bits which could be misunderstood? And if there are, talk about it and resolve those so you're all on the same page. I have included some lists of hopefully useful links for those less familiar with this area and would like to know more. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, May. I think you brought it into a very sort of practical, what can you do? How can you make this easier for yourselves and your teams? Because clearly there's a lot of information to get your heads around. I'm going to invite Andrew and Philip back and we'll just do our Q&A session now. We've had a lot of questions in. So where to start? I think I might actually just, I'm just going to dive in. There's one here about, do you envisage an accreditation body to certify your systems and processes as golden thread compliant? I might put that to May. I know you were talking about different templates and things you can use, but actually as a lawyer, do you think it's going to have to become more standardized and people actually know that what they're doing can be signed off and is fit for purpose?
I'd expect it to eventually go down the BIM route, where you have certification, you have templates, you have guidance, because otherwise it goes to, there's 101 different ways of providing the golden thread, and that's not going to achieve the purpose. However, I'd expect it will take possibly a couple of years before we get to a stage of people understanding what does good look like, because you can't have a certification, can't have real templates unless everyone agrees with the position.
Okay, I think that sort of speaks a bit to Andrew's point earlier during your presentation, Andrew, where you were saying that we need to kind of, the government is pushing this back a little bit on industry, but also in this interim period, it means we could have a bit of a lack of consistency or standardization. Is that how you understand things?
I think it's inevitable, but if you think about how inefficient and unproductive the industry is, I fully concur with May. We need to get to a place where there is consistency and everyone produces these documents in a way which, you know, there's absolute certainty that the output will meet the standard required. So the more of that we do, the more collaboration, the more sharing, the better.
Okay, Philip, I know you were saying at the start you were sort of slightly relieved that we hadn't immediately gone down the BIM route with this, that it was a bit more open. Was that because you feel there are parts of the supply chain that aren't up to speed yet with BIM, or do you think it's just got to be a sort of gradual process? What's your thinking? Oh, sorry, mic's off. Let's just see. We're back to the mic issue. Can you just try on and off again and see if that just triggers it?
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, got it.
The issue that I had in mind about the comment about BIM was, and I'm thinking specifically of housing associations and long-term landlords that manage a significant portfolio. I could imagine the Sunday evening phone call about you know, my water taps, you know, water's flooding into my flat, and some shift operative is working in the call centre trying to open a BIM model to find out what the format and how, you know, what's this particular flat, you know, what's the servicing structure for this particular flat. Understanding how a 3D model is used and how people might get information in terms of the management and maintenance is a step change in the kind of competency and skill set that would be required. So I saw real problems. I mean, some of the housing associations that have invested significantly in BIM protocols and exchange information documents are still quite open, saying we've got absolutely no intention of going into the 3D model sphere for a number of years yet, and yet I would consider them to be, you know, leaders in terms of understanding, thinking through what BIM might mean for them as long-term asset managers. So I think there's a real practical problems with how you hold the information and how is that information used by the various groups within a you know, that asset managing landlord.
Okay, so it's about different requirements for different parts of the industry, really. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the designers have been using BIM for a long time, quite happily, because it works for them and adds value to them. I think clients and end users have taken a long time to think, how might we take advantage of this and what are the potential opportunities to add value for us? And I think this is positive that this is forcing their hand to think more seriously about it rather than just putting it into the too hard basket, but I still think it's some way off.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, there's another question around the as-built information. I'm trying to remember whose presentation that point was made under, but this person, Rebecca's asking, this as-built information has typically been more of a final construction issue. Would a survey not be required at completion to provide a true record of what has been built? Is she, I don't know, Andrew, maybe, was that in your presentation where you were talking about the as-built information?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. I think it's a really relevant point because designers often believe that their last construction issue document is what contractors work to, and if they never visit site ever again, that's what they would expect to see when they do visit site or go to that project. But we know that's not always the case. So I think that one of two things will need to happen. Either those last construction issue documents need to be updated, either by the author or another party, or as has been suggested, you need to go back and survey and make sure it does actually reflect what has been built.
Yeah, and
It's a really
sorry, Philip.
Sorry.
You can't come in on there, Philip. Sorry, yeah.
I think it's a real issue too about whether the contractors and the construction sectors are going to get serious about taking change control seriously. That's my understanding, one of the reasons why Dame Judith Hackitt pushed change control so strongly, because she was sick and tired of as-built drawings bearing little relationship to what was actually built, because of that point that Andrew talked about. So yes, you could survey at the end, or you could actually get more serious about the site team understanding the obligations to capture the changes that the site team might make for quite legitimate buildability issues, but understanding the importance of reflecting that back through into the digital design information.
Yeah, May, do you want to come in on that point?
I think one of the things I've noticed over the years is you often see requirements for as-built, both in consultants' appointments, but also contractors. And I'd agree, the as-built models and drawings often bear very little resemblance to what's on site for various reasons. And it's a problem that hopefully the Golden Thread will flush out, because it's an ongoing, it's not a new issue, but it's been recognized as a risk. And I think surveys, and with the amount of technology we have now compared to what we had before, it's much easier to provide an as-built model. But I'd also say it has to be placed on the parties most with the ability to provide that sort of record, and that will differ from project to project.
Okay, I think got time for one last question. There were actually a few around this topic, around the actual components of a building, so the products, and sort of saying that often products don't have much data available, much test data available, or if there is test data, it might not be fit for purpose. And I think one of the questions is there likely to be a criteria around the quality of information that would pass as sufficient information to be included in Golden Thread? And if so, is there going to be a greater demand on the supply chain to ensure construction products are tested? And I think we can see where that question's going. It's quite a long question, but I think the whole product part of this is quite important. I know that the presentation didn't particularly deal with that point, but does anybody want to come in on that?
I'm happy to jump in, and others can shoot me down, but I think the Gateway 3 submission and demonstrating to the building safety regulator that the building has been built safely, and by part of that is that the products that have been used have been appropriate. The whole product substitution issue was raised by Dame Judith as part of her report. So providing evidence, whether that is product data or other forms of evidence to support, to say, the insulation, the fire stopping, the cavity barriers, and all the other elements are fit for purpose, is an integral part of demonstrating that you've built the building safely and that it, complies with the various building regulations. So, if your delivery team is looking to use products that have limited product data, I'd suggest they need to look at other products, because it's absolutely fundamental that you need to be able to demonstrate that each product is fit for purpose. If it doesn't have product data, then you have to question, why doesn't it have it? Product data has been around, and the whole issue of whether the product data is accurate and correctly specified is a separate issue, but people shouldn't be using stuff with limited product data, I would argue.
Yep. So I mean, I guess this we could probably round off at this point. All of these measures are around tightening up, getting rid of loopholes, getting rid of gaps, ensuring things are verified. So I'm assuming everybody on this panel would concur that that is very much needed. Can I just give a final word to each of you as to what the audience's main takeaway from, you know, if they take one thing away from this session around the golden thread, you know, what would your one piece of advice be if they're sort of scratching their heads as to how to get their heads around this? May, can I start with you?
The golden thread will reduce risk, increase efficiency. However, we need to learn from our BIM experience and make sure the specifications are clear, discuss it, use available guidance rather than just say, I want some golden thread and some stuff, because it's going to be a whole world of pain.
Yeah. Andrew?
I think for me, the important thing is not to be afraid of this, but to recognize the absolute critical importance of good record keeping.
Okay, and final word to you, Philip.
I'm going to be greedy and go for two. I'd support May's one about the importance of being very clear about what you want right at the start, invest the time right at the start to define very prescriptively exactly what you want, how you want the information, the format, why you want it. But I would also want to end that good quality information is an opportunity to add value to your process, to your built asset, to your management costs. We really should take advantage of this and see it as an opportunity to add value rather than a regulatory imposition.
Great. Well, look, that's a really positive note to end on. I just want to thank you all, Philip, Andrew and May. That's the last webinar of our Risk and Regulation series, but you can catch up on all of the webinars via our websites. If you're hungry for more webinars as well on other topics, on Friday we'll be releasing more details about our Social Value Live event, so keep your eyes out for that one. But I hope you've all enjoyed the Risk and Regs. I think it's a very, very important topic, very just full of information there, so hopefully everyone's got something to take away. That's all we've got time for today, so thanks to my panel and thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.